that's a great, that's something that is convenient for somebody like that.
Yeah.
It is, really, if you think about it, right? So I can't, I'm with you, I can't envision a retail location going in, and clearly, this will never be a restaurant. We don't
Yeah.
have the septic capacity to do it, and that's not the
Yeah.
intention ever.
Right.
So that's not even a fear, because we didn't build in the capacity.
How many parking places are in the Willow Street lot? And,
Good question. I have no idea.
About 10 or something.
okay, and how many of them are assigned, or do we know any, is that,
Other than Accord, they're not assigned to it.
okay.
It's a nice.
So that's a, if I may, that's a question I think we should be prepared to answer.
Yeah.
Because naturally, the abutters are going to be, well, you know, for those individuals that have two cars, where are they gonna be parking? Are they gonna be clogging up Willow Street? Are they gonna? No, they can't.
They can't.
Yeah.
This is a question
But it
that's
will
going
be
to,
a better question.
it's going to come.
Yeah.
So
And I,
the team should be prepared to answer that question, to the
And-
satisfaction of this board and the abutters.
Agreed.
Is our role site plan review? Is that what we're doing?
yeah,
I just want to be sure.
Just out of curiosity, what are the economics on this? The 18 units, how many are market rate?
Oh,
All, okay. Have some idea of target rents?
this is going to be sold to a third-party developer by the town.
Okay,
So, you know,
he'll figure it out.
yeah, honestly.
You're gonna sell the plan, not
The
the,
whole, my understanding from the HDC is the goal is to put it out to bid so that the town can actually design what it believes the community needs, and
So-
then, you know, actually put out to bid to third parties, correct?
So we're not addressing the affordable housing needs?
This has, no, it's gonna be market rate housing. It's we're probably rental.
I hear you, but I thought the really big need of the town was to,
Require, doesn't have to meet
There
the
is no,
inclusionary.
no, not for this particular type of
No.
use, no.
is there any requirement for a developer to make,
Not if it's
One?
rental.
Okay.
Not if it's rental, no.
oh, okay,
If it were condos, then yes.
yeah, okay,
You'd have to have 2 units being on
Yeah.
one.
But this is serving a major need of,
oh, yeah,
Absolutely.
of the town.
Yeah.
rental,
Having 18 rental units hit the
Yeah.
market.
I think the idea that they're smaller units, you know, they're
Right.
not the 1,300, 1,400 square foot apartments, they're the 700 to 900 square foot, means that someone's not gonna set up here and live here for 30 years, it'll serve the community
Yeah.
by rotating.
Right.
You know, that's pretty cool.
I think
Well,
that stretch between the yellow building and this building needs to be investigated better, because that's the north side of the building. And nothing's gonna grow in there, and nothing's gonna defrost in the winter in there, and so, I'm not sure what the solution is, but at least a small stretch right between the two.
so in terms of process, if, once this site plan review is complete, then you'll put it out to bid? Okay, and suppose, okay, the buyer will have to do all of his due diligence in negotiation with you. I mean, he might have some different assumptions or whatever, but you'll iron that out in the price.
Right.
Okay,
This is very much like what happened at Canberra. The
Right.
owner of that property went through a special permit process and then sold the property with the special permit in place.
Right.
As you've seen, or might have seen, they went back with minor modifications
Right.
over time as they made some adjustments to it, but that's the intention with this property.
So 2 years of development for someone. Someone buying this is gonna be buying a shovel-ready
Yeah,
project,
Yeah.
and they're gonna save 2 years in development.
and substantial cost of getting those plans.
it's a very nice design, may I say.
Yeah, I agree.
It's great.
I think Dan brings up a very good question, so I'm not sure whether April, you guys deal with that, or the architect deals with that, but I think that's a very good point, because it's gonna be totally shaded.
Right, you're talking about in here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Thad and I had talked about fencing in here for screening. And I suspect there may be like light planting areas, more kind of in there, but This might be more open lawn, and it may serve itself better that way, especially if it's in a position where stuff isn't gonna grow.
Yeah.
But you'll have the screening.
And what's the intent between us and the or between the town and the Black Cow? Is that just gonna be open to that parking lot?
Yeah, that's the intention, is that it'll be open. I mean, there'll be we'll have some planting on the, we can have some planting on the edges of the basin here. But for all intents and purposes, it'll be fairly open.
I walked through there the other night, and that's a disaster back there right now,
Mm-hmm,
because that's where their dumpsters are all parked.
mm-hmm.
And where is the dumpster park?
There are a couple over here.
Oh, but what about the ones for
That's-
this parcel?
Black,
For this
oh,
property.
for us.
We have a trash room inside the building that would probably be for both commercial and residential, and a set of double doors that could open, and that could get picked up twice a week or something, depends on, I think the intent is that the trash is not visible.
So if that's the case, then the trash would not be part of the town contract.
Oh, it is.
It would have to be totally separate.
Mhm. It's gonna be all an individual contract.
Yeah.
The snow removal, the maintenance, the
Everything, it's
sewer
all
basins.
separate. Yeah.
That's the other beauty of this, is you're going to be adding to the tax base with all of these, individual units, so the value of the property increases dramatically and absolutely zero.
Yeah.
Did you consider moving the bridge closer to the Linden Street side so that any residents that wanted to use it could walk straight through without having to go into the corner of the Black Cow lot and then walk out and around?
You mean more over here? Or-
Or still in the thin spot, but.
Over
just
to the
west
right?
left,
Oh,
not
over
there.
here?
No,
Yeah.
No, right, yeah, right.
Well, there, maybe a little bit
Yeah,
right there.
Right there.
Because that way, someone walking down through could just go straight across.
Right.
That bridge becomes more community asset rather than private.
And I think that's more in line with the driveway between the cows.
I'm just thinking of someone cutting to
Yeah,
it,
no, that's a good
Mhm.
point.
It would go right into the Salem Park bank.
just becomes more of a community asset rather than
But
just
you're
you.
more in line with the driveway.
But you would be,
Right.
because you can see it on the overhead, you can see it right there.
It would be more of a direct line of, as you walk from Willow straight
I
across.
can't read that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it goes right along the edge of Black Cow
And that
now.
property line in the middle there is the edge of Salem Bud,
I think it's,
Right, so it's maybe better.
right there.
So that's over,
It's over here now.
yeah,
Right there.
the right. right
That
there.
property line is that
Yep.
parking lot.
This one right there.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think I actually do remember it being on that side at one point, and I think it was a question as to how publicly accessible you guys wanted it to be.
As much as possible.
Yeah,
Which
So-
building is the Black Cow place?
The Black Cow is back here. It's a little bit further back. It's actually not shown on the page,
Okay.
but it's right about there.
So it's Salem 5 that,
Salem 5 is back here.
okay.
So this property is Salem 5, and this one is Black Cow.
so maybe right on the property line, the bridge,
Yeah, so if the
That's
bridge
right.
goes, if the walk goes
Old
here, it
brick
would end up
building, yeah.
somewhere in here.
Yeah.
Which is more on the Salem 5 side than the Black Cow side.
And we ought to get them to pay for it.
Well, I guess the concern I have would
The
be,
customers right in their door.
yeah. I mean, that's the way you have to sell it to them.
Well, I'm not sure we have to sell anything to anybody because it still will be on our property. It will
Right.
stop at that property line. I mean, definitely we want them involved in that discussion.
So basically, it would empty out into that parking lot that's back there,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which you might be an incentive to getting the owners that own the parking lot to clean it up.
yeah, that's what I was wondering, if that becomes, or to even make a stripe to show where the walkway is.
Yeah.
Right, they may.
To
have
direct people.
That's a good point, is
That
they,
is-
I don't know if they can, but it should be a point of discussion as they
Yeah.
can remove a
Yeah.
parking space so that it opens up, so they can walk
Yeah.
Right,
into the parking lot.
Yeah, I mean, actually, if we were to move it over here, the Salem 5 spaces are actually 90 degree this way. So,
No, not on the side?
Right, there aren't any on this side, so
Good.
there wouldn't
Mhm.
be a need to
And
remove the
that is
parking spot.
never full.
Yeah, yeah,
Every
it's
time I
much,
go back there, there's
yeah,
about 4 cars,
yeah.
And Salem 5, yeah.
so.
And I'm assuming we're gonna have a better lighting plan than we did at the other Willow Street property.
Yes.
You definitely will.
Yeah.
Oh, that Willow Street, oh, never
So,
mind.
and just, I don't think anybody mentioned it, but is the plan to have the mechanicals on the roof?
No.
So, yeah, I can.
And also, will there be an elevator?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why. I just
So
wanted
is
to
there a
ask.
That's
fourth
what you
floor
mean by
elevator?
mechanicals.
So, it's shown
Yes.
on, it's shown on the,
So there is an elevator right here in the building.
Okay.
Serving all 3 levels. But,
there's
See
the
the shaft
mechanical
up
on my.
Yeah.
so this is the top of the elevator shaft coming up
Okay.
through. But
Yep.
all of these gable roofs, behind all of this, I mean, this footprint, is pretty big. The gable roofs only come if I'm looking in plan. They don't extend all the way to the center of the building. So the point is that you end up with a really flat, you actually end up with a flat roof behind those gable roofs that will never be seen by anyone down at ground floor level.
Good spot to put some
And
antennas.
that's where, right here, a roof plan, see, these are all our gable roofs around the perimeter of the building. Our elevator over on here, and a big area of flat roof that would encourage solar panels. You could also, and that's where we could put all the mechanicals, all the condensers that you don't wanna see, for all the apartments and even commercial space, makeup area units, stuff like that, could go up here.
So how much lower will the flat part of the roof be than the peaks? Are the peaks gonna hide all that?
Yes.
So what's the difference in height between the two? Do you have any idea? Just an idea.
I
Yeah.
think it's at least 4.5 feet, 5
Okay.
feet, but when you're down,
That's,
Two-
you're looking up.
2.5,
so
3 stories from
Yeah, I
there.
get that.
there's literally, I don't even imagine this is gonna be visible from anywhere else.
What is the
So-
box that you show in the section drawing, or
This
the,
right here,
yeah?
that's the footprint of
No,
where.
but when you showed us the
Show
elevation,
the perspective, you can see the elevator.
That-
yeah,
no.
so the elevator shaft is visible.
Well,
This,
I
in
can't
straight
believe it's a
elevation.
flat.
If you're
In
at
straight
30
elevation,
feet
it'd
above
be-
the ground, looking straight across it.
yeah,
I bet you in the perspective, in the perspective does show everything, you won't see that. Because
Yeah.
you're looking up, right
Yeah.
now, you're just looking at a flat picture, it's just like
Yeah.
we talked about the perspective, it's strange how different it is.
Well, actually, looking at it from here, not knowing that it was an elevator, I thought it was a chimney.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
So,
so I wonder if it would be helpful to have some comparison of this building with the other one on Willow Street
If
at
that's
the
gonna-
hearing?
That's gonna happen.
Yeah,
They'll, we discuss that.
We have pictures for it if you want.
yeah,
no,
so
that's
that,
not the comparison we're talking
What did they-
That's a much smaller
We're
footprint,
talking about comparing.
not the point.
it's a smaller,
Point is
I
the
think
height,
just
not
this,
the-
the
and the
height.
thing, and the elevator shaft sticks up.
Yeah.
about. They're talking about comparing it to, Willow Street building.
Right, just even to show the height of it, comparison, might be helpful.
To Palazzolo's building?
Yeah.
What are you saying?
Yeah,
I actually don't think that would be helpful.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's just gonna stir up a can of worms.
Yeah. I think the best part is compare it to the buildings that surround it.
That's what I think is very helpful, because if it's that much lower.
Yeah, especially the yellow building, the Cutter building, that's the high
Yeah.
one there.
Yeah,
So what is the height of this
So we
relative to
actually-
the Cutter building?
We were thinking about that, and we,
What
so
is the
here you
Cutter
go.
building?
oh,
The three,
Here we go.
that's great.
Okay, so this is, we're taking estimated, this is all rough
Yeah.
based on counting collapse of the building and, making some assumptions, but this is that yellow building on Railroad, with its ridge essentially at what we're calling building height, because that gets measured from the center point, or the average point of the E to ridge here. So we have 3 full stories, this is our building, 3 full
Yeah.
stories, and the gable roof above
Yeah.
that, right?
So it's a few feet taller overall.
So it's about 4 feet
It's only 4
difference
feet though.
Yeah,
Right.
to the very, very top of that roof.
but is it at a lower elevation?
Not really.
Is it in
No.
a lower,
It's not as-
lower site?
It's not as
No.
different as you think it is, because we're actually filling in part
Okay.
of the low point on
Okay.
the site to get the
Yeah.
finished floors and the
So
grading
you-
to all
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, if you
And-
go out, you can see the railroad is very much, it's set down too.
Yeah,
But like the houses on Willow, there's a big difference.
okay.
But the big difference between this and the other Willow Street property is, when you're on Railroad Ave, you're never gonna see that.
Right,
That's right.
Because the
Right.
angle is so, it's
That's
so
right.
far,
Yeah.
you've got that, what?
Well, you'll see it through the parking lot.
You'll see it through the parking lot, but that's all.
Right.
And that's,
And
that's,
that's only this much of it.
And
right?
that's the point of
There's-
trying to preserve the trees on the other
Right.
side.
Yeah.
So from, you know,
that breaks it all up.
it does, so from work, so all the railroad basically on that side where you're gonna see it is all the business section. But from, you know, behind on Linden, when you get to it, the intent was to create the massing, hide it with the existing tree, put the, you know, they worked tirelessly to make sure the placement was gonna be, again, so you didn't have as much of an impact, and that would be your result. So that if you're looking at a building that's 79 feet tall to its peak, and the
Yeah.
building behind's 85 feet, you can't see a thing.
Yeah, no, it's a nice plan.
Yeah, they did a good job.
Other questions? Other things that they need to think about? All right,
I think you gave us a lot to think about. We're gonna, you know, start our filing, and we'll see you in about a month.
I
A little
think,
bit better, I think October 15th is our goal
very
for
good.
that meeting you have.
I think really checking the septic load and
Yeah.
the drainage that's going to be required, so that when public health gets it, they can say, yeah, that's gonna be a piece of cake, not to worry.
No, and Mr. Weed's point, we want to address all of those hot button points, and if that's gonna be one of the issues, you know, that's what we want to work with. You know, that's why we're having a butters meeting, that's why we came here formally. We want to know what those issues are before we file even,
Water is always an issue.
you know.
Either too much or too little.
Yes, that's right, exactly.
Wrong place.
Okay.
That would be
All
too
right,
much.
very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
your
you.
time.
It's good.
Good luck.
Huh?
Good luck.
I turn it back to Brian.
Well, the community is like someone, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what the home wants to do.
Put this away now.
I still couldn't read the numbers, they're still blurry.
I can't either.
It is one, but it shouldn't take that long to.
I just want to take all these apart so they can have their meeting. I'm just gonna try and get out of here.
Brian,
You understand now
why,
where the,
why did, excuse me,
yeah.
why did Andrew walk away, saying that he couldn't handle it, he didn't know how to
Because he
plan
needed the
it?
sister site. What? It was always about having the sister site.
Oh.
Long Meadow or whatever other big site. He couldn't just do this one.
That's what he said, okay.
So my house.
Couldn't
and
just
move
do,
this one.
he couldn't just do senior. Yeah, it's a little, I mean,
Oh, sorry.
he could have done like
As long as I would get a
seven or
carport.
eight things that, again, financially doesn't create a different
For that
program.
green.
Not
Yeah,
everybody
I,
run out in the rain. snow.
when I bought a house, they said it has to have a garage.
But he does a completely different
Oh,
method.
no, thank you.
That was all affordable. And, everybody wanted, well, they wanted senior there initially, but, again, that wasn't gonna
Guys
work.
in the office. If you don't put a sticker on it, they
There were
take it.
some other big projects. That's why he pulled it.
He needed economies of scale
Makes sense.
for a more profitable site.
I was gonna have them made
Oh,
with a
that
logo
maybe,
on them,
but,
and I was like, wait,
he
then
couldn't
everybody's
just do
definitely gonna have the same.
He couldn't just do senior affordable.
Yeah.
Okay, on to master planning discussion. Can you, Rick, bring us up to date on a little bit where we are? I know you were working on the PowerPoint and so forth. And I believe that went to the consultant. and they're now kind of compiling, do you know? I mean, Patrick's not here, so
And,
exactly where
we
we're
were
at.
all supposed to give Patrick feedback.
Yes, so, the visuals that Laura Walsh created were sent to everybody right after the meeting last time, so that was almost 2 weeks ago, with the request that people provide comments, feedback, suggested edits the following Friday. I don't know how many people made comments or suggestions for changes. I haven't seen or heard any. They have subsequently been forwarded to our consultant, and she is going to be taking those and putting those together with their slide presentation, and she indicates she's going to be sending that to Patrick by Tuesday of next week. So hopefully we can take a look at it and review it and have a conversation about the format and flow of the discussion. So that's where we are in terms of the presentation.
Great.
And I stopped by and talked to the director of the senior center and discussed the seating arrangement and audio and visual. It's not optimal, but I think it'll work. There's space for about 50 people there on round tables. And I'm gonna go in on that Thursday afternoon, and we're gonna move the tables closer to, they've got probably maybe a 60-inch screen TV. So that's what will be used for the visual projection. And they've got a good audio system, so I think that'll work.
Great. Yeah, just a reminder, it is next Thursday, the 19th, 7 o'clock at the senior center, so everybody on the board that can make it would be great.
I
And-
posted this again on
Yep.
Facebook pages a couple of days ago.
Yep.
You see the article in the paper.
Yes,
too.
yep.
And I've talked to Neil Zoloff, who is the new correspondent for Hamilton Wenham, and he's going to try and attend the meeting. And if not, he's requested a copy of the updated master plan and then follow-up conversations and we'll do a follow-up article on it. So, and I know Patrick has sent all the boards invitations, and in fact, I think he's sent personal invitations to the board chairmans, because I talked to the head of the Affordable Housing Trust. I'm drawing a blank.
Russ Tanzer.
Yeah, Russ Tanzer, and he said that he was very impressed that he had gotten a note specifically inviting him, so he was gonna make sure that his people were notified that it was there. And then I was at a Board of Selectmen's meeting last night, doing a presentation on the new website for the downtown businesses, and also mentioned that it was coming up on the 19th, so.
Great. Yeah, I mean, the word's definitely gotten out. I mean, paper, social media, all the boards, so hopefully.
Oh, and the finance committee, I've talked to the finance committee, because I think it's important that they be there as well, because there really is a financial impact to this whole, and I think they've been the kind of missing piece. Now, they, by charter and by precedent, they don't want to get involved, because they need to remain objective and independent, but they've indicated they want to stay informed and where they can contribute to the discussion.
Great. Any other discussion on that? We're good. Up next, potential future bylaw amendments. I mean, unless anybody has any specific items to talk about, I'm just gonna kind of leave that until Patrick's back. And we talked about it last time some, and talked a little bit about, potential bylaws we might bring, and, there were a couple that we talked about, but I think we have plenty of time to do it, and
That's the spring meeting.
Yes.
We're trying to
Yes.
organize things so that the bylaw changes all occur
There-
in the spring. One fell swoop.
Well, the plan is, I think, to have that happen at the fall meeting. That way, like, all the budget stuff, school stuff is one meeting, and then bylaws are another. It just, for this fall, it was just too quick to do anything by the time we got that directive. So I think they're still gonna allow, if we want anything for this spring, instead of waiting to the fall, I think they're gonna allow that to happen. So, and I think, we got to finalize what we're gonna actually bring, if anything, to that meeting, so, but I think we'll just, if everybody's all right, we'll just wait until next time. When Patrick's back.
Could I ask about, I mean, this is the housing section now, and if we add that to the master plan, it's like twice as much as the master plan, I think. Are you gonna integrate it into the master plan as a document, or,
Well,
no, this is just gonna stand alone?
well, I think part of the whole plan was to start with this
Yes, I know.
and then start updating the rest. And exactly what sequence, we haven't really talked about, but, I mean, honestly, I think this can probably stand alone at first, at least, until we update the rest, instead of trying to integrate this into our 15-year-old master
Yeah.
plan. That'd be my suggestion. And, you know, I don't know how fast the rest of it's gonna happen. I mean, a lot of it is up to us, but it's not just us. Obviously, there's a lot to it, open space and historic and, you know, whatever. I mean, there's a ton of other stuff
Part
to
of
do,
this
so.
gives recommendations about what the open space plan should do to integrate with it and so forth. You can
Right.
see that all over the town.
Right.
Are you, Richard, are you working on an open space plan?
Am I working on it? I'm the chair of the committee.
Do you chair the committee that's working on an open space and recreation plan?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have an idea when that might be complete?
Okay. The first thing is that the actual plan part is being written by MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council. They've taken the version that the old committee had, and they are, the MAPC is, look, can I pull that closer, just make sure? Okay. The MAPC is going to wordsmith it into the way the state wants it to sound. We have worked on goals. The committee itself has worked on the goals, has a tentative set of goals with some steps to getting the goals made or finished. They are online on the town website, and I posted them on the 2 Facebook pages. They're all tentative. All of that will be subject to hearings and so on, just like everything else. MAPC is going to meet with us on October 3rd at our regularly scheduled meeting to go over what they have at that point, which is 2 of the sections, and I've forgotten which 2. And then they are shooting for a completion date sometime in November. Maybe later, maybe not, I don't know for sure.
And when will the public hearings occur?
Well, that's when, we'll get to that point after we know when they're gonna be done. When they give us an idea of when they're gonna be done, then I'll come and start asking to schedule those.
So that piece, so that actually can be added to the sort of master plan, because that will be updated.
Yeah.
It will have, the Affordable Housing Trust is completing its, what's the term, what's the term we use? Drawing a blank.
For affordable housing?
Yeah, their plan.
Attainable. What?
The plan.
Oh, the plan. Oh, the housing production plan.
Housing production plan, so that will be up to date. So we've got 3 major components already done, and then I think there's what, transportation, there's 2 or 3 others, but they're relatively minor. I mean, we don't have a transportation plan, because we don't have a, so they're relatively easily done. So we might think about, once we're done with this, figuring out how to get those other elements done and then just combine it into a completed project.
Right.
yeah, I think it's historic, transportation, open space,
Space,
housing.
Yeah, there's one or two that we're missing that I can't.
One or two more, but relatively easy.
May I give you some detail on scenic roads that Patrick asked me to look at as part of the open space?
What's that, you want to?
Pardon?
What do you say, you want to?
If I may.
You have a couple minutes. sure.
Okay. Okay, there is a list of scenic roads that the town has, and it's on the maps, and there's like 13 streets or roads. And the question Patrick had was, how were these roads designated? Who did this? So, I had been going to the old Open Space Committee meetings, and I had a memory that they didn't really know when those roads were selected or not, and they figured that when at some point it would just get verified. That's vague. I know that's vague, and that's because they were vague. So at any rate, there's this list. And so the first question I had, Patrick said to me, go find out, see if you can find out when these roads were actually set up as scenic byways. So the first thing I did was contact the two people that I knew had the most history for the most years, and that would be Bill Bowler and Mark Johnson. Neither of them knew anything about when this was, when these roads were made, other than you. I didn't think of you.
talked to Susanna Colorado Mansfield?
I don't.
And she was the open space original person?
Okay, I'll contact her at some
Yeah.
point.
How do we know it was them that designated?
Well, I'll come to that. This gets better and better. So, neither of them knew anything, which is fine, not fine, but fine. So then, as I'm looking at the Mass General Law, it says that the Concom or the Historic Commission would be the groups to designate the roads. So, okay, who am I gonna talk to there? And all of a sudden it hit me, I looked at the list of historic members, and that's Jack Hawk. So sure enough, Jack had information. And he's basically, he said something and it got me either, I don't remember what triggered it, but I did a Google search and came up with a 1973 town report in which the housing, I think it was housing, I've forgotten which some committee said we should have some scenic roads, and here's the list of roads we should have, and we would hope that the Concom and Historic Commission would, one of those two committees, according to Mass General Law, designate these roads. Okay, and that's all it said. And so I emailed Jack, and we go back and forth a few times, and the substance of that discussion was, as far as he knew, as of 2013, there was no bylaw written for the town or by the town to make scenic roads.
I don't think it's a town
I don't
bylaw.
think it's a bylaw. It's not a
I thought it's a
bylaw.
state.
Let me finish.
It's a state.
Let me
Let's get to the
finish.
final point
The
here.
final point is that you can, some towns do have a bylaw.
Right.
It looks like there was never any bylaw made.
Right.
Nobody seems to know when or who actually did designate these roads, other than the one report in that report that I mentioned from 1973. And Jack emailed me and said there was definitely, as of 2013, no town bylaw. The
Of course
towns
not.
could set up a
We know
bylaw.
that, we know that.
Yeah,
We know there's no bylaw.
yeah.
It's just, I don't know if there has to be a bylaw to.
Well, that's
to
the question. The question was, how did these streets
Well,
become
but-
designated?
But there's a designation and then there's a bylaw, right? I think
Right.
that's, I mean, I don't know the Mass General Law behind it, but I think the question is, did the Concom or the Historic District Commission or both designate the roads?
Or neither.
What does it
Or
mean
neither.
to be designated?
Well, that's the question, right?
I believe, I thought there was a state program where when you designated the roads, it was up to local people to
Right.
choose the roads.
Right.
And then the state either provided some, money to help you preserve the roads, but there was also a requirement that you couldn't modernize the roads. You couldn't,
Yeah.
curb them and put
Oh, yeah, yeah,
sidewalks
yeah.
on
Oh,
them.
right, right.
There was some little give and take like that, but it was a state plan. But some agency in each city and town chose the roads.
The
Well,
problem
that's
is.
the question is,
Well, I
there,
think-
at one point, there were two different lists, right? There was,
That-
there was a
that's
road,
a
there was a
very-
road, right, there was a road at one point that was left off or something
Yeah.
like that, and
Right.
so we didn't know which one was the
And
real
the-
list.
The
So-
list that's in that 1973 document has 13 roads on it. Then somewhere along the line, one road got dropped off. The problem is that the state says it should be one of the two commissions that does the designating,
Right,
and that's in the Mass General Law.
right.
So
Which commissions?
Historic or
Commission or the Conservation Commission. The problem is,
Amazing.
did either of them do that?
Yeah,
And
we've been
the
acting
answer
like
is,
somebody
nobody
has.
knows.
Right.
Because we-
And
All right.
Jack says a lot of that stuff never, ever happened.
Okay, so they need to do
So,
it.
so we don't know.
But then here's the real kicker. I went back a couple of times and did this Google search again, and on the third time I came up with a history of roads in Hamilton, something like that title. And I think Jack wrote it, after 2016. And in it, it states that in 1973, these roads were designated, and I think, I don't have it in front of me, so I'd have to read it to make sure. I think it says that the report did the designating, which is true, it did, but it didn't say,
Wasn't
the
official.
state doesn't say the
So-
report.
There was no official designation that we
So
could
we
find.
There's no
have
official
roads that have-
designation.
So we have orphan roads that have no parent. So all it needs to happen is the historic district or the Concom needs to look at the list and say, yes, we bless this, these are
Yeah.
designated historic
Right.
roads.
In a sense, yes,
All right.
yeah.
And
So
it
that's
probably
where it's
doesn't
at.
need to be any more complicated than that, because we've been going off this list for God
Yeah.
knows how long.
Yeah.
Even pretending.
No one's
Yeah.
said
No,
anything
no
other than
one-
the one dropping off.
But the point is that the character of the road shouldn't be changed. And-
Right.
Well,
And when we
that's,
get to something like Cutler Road, that has lots of bumps in it, and the town would like to smooth out the bumps and make it much more of a thoroughfare, and this board, planning board, went out and reviewed all that, and they said, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, we shouldn't be cutting those down. That's having the wavy
Well,
roads and so
well,
forth.
Peter, I was on the board at the time that
Yeah.
happened, and I actually was part of probably 30 citizens that went before the
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen. What they wanted to do was pave it. They didn't care, they weren't talking about getting the bumps out. They take the bumps out 2 or 3 times a year by grading it.
yeah.
They wanted to pave it. Because they thought it would be a maintenance cost savings rather than having to grade it 2 or 3 times a year.
Well, it was meant
There's
to
a
be
similar thing, when we
slowing
lived on
down.
Bridge Street, there's stone walls right up Bracken sides up
Let's
against the
time out
road. And
again
somebody
here for a
wanted
second.
to
Let's
do
come back to the Mass
something.
General Law.
Well,
The Mass General Law doesn't say anything about what you're talking about. It says you may not cut down trees without permission of the planning board,
Right.
and you may not destroy the stone walls. And I think you can get permission to do certain things.
Yeah.
Doesn't talk about paving, doesn't talk about taking waves out of the road,
No.
doesn't talk about any of that kind of stuff, and doesn't talk about anything in the Mass General Law about giving money to the towns to do anything. It only talks about those 2 things. It says 4 things. It says Historic Commission or Conservation Commission, that's 2, no trees and no stone walls.
No work.
No touching them
Well,
without permission.
I mean,
So
do
what
we
would
really
you-
have to do anything?
Yeah, we don't
I guess is
really
the
have to do
question.
other,
Yeah.
anything.
Well, somebody, somehow we have to have the proper designation.
Do we?
So that should be,
Well,
Change it.
so.
Huh?
It's only an
Why
issue if
change it?
somebody sues the town when they try to cut down a
So-
tree.
Yeah.
So, Richard.
I think the part of the
here's a
problem is
here's a
excuse me for a
suggestion.
second. Part of the problem is that the Public Works Director wants clarification to make
So-
things
so,
simple for
okay,
him.
So here's a
That makes
suggestion.
sense.
Well, that would have been good to know initially, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
So-
okay, that's why I didn't find that out initially either.
So, here's a suggestion. Communicate this information to Patrick.
I'm gonna.
Ask Patrick to communicate that to either of the two boards and ask them to designate.
To vote to designate.
To
Right.
designate the roads.
Yeah, well,
So
actually,
Then the problem will be solved.
yeah, Patrick was gonna send it over to Joe and let Joe deal with it. But yes, that's another way to deal with it.
Well, either way,
Either way.
push
Yeah.
it, make it.
So there it
happen,
is.
Move it forward.
It's actually,
Anything else?
Minutes.
Minutes.
that's a good suggestion, Rick, thank you.
I move approval of the minutes of August 20th.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Opposed, all right.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Rick, I remember that meeting when, I think it was a town meeting.